Well done, everybody. Did you manage to use those clever words to help you describe where the worm was and where the plant pot was? I bet you did. Good thinking, everybody. Right, let's have a think about our next maths job for today then. And the first thing I'd like you to do is to make yourself some worms. Now, I've just made some really simple worms out of Play-Doh. And you can choose today. You might choose to make some worms out of Play-Doh. You might decide to use paper. You might decide to use some string. You might decide to use some Lego and join lots of different bits of Lego together to make your worms. It's completely up to you. And you might also decide to make them really detailed and give them eyes and things. Or you might just go for a nice simple worm like I've made here. Anything you'd like to do, guys, is absolutely fine. But what I would like you to do is to try and make at least 4 of them, okay? And try and make them so they're all a bit different in length. Because once you've made them, we're going to see if we can compare them and put them in length order. Now, do you remember all those weeks ago when we were looking at the super veggies? And we did this with our super veggies, didn't we? We put them in height order and we found out that the spring onion was the longest super veggie by far, wasn't he? So once you've made your worms today, let's put them in order and see which one of them is the longest one. Can you remind me, if we're going to compare the length of our worms, what do we need to do? There's something we need to do to make sure it's fair. Can you remember what it is? Can we compare our worms like this? So can I put them like that to help me compare them? No, I can't, can I? What's wrong with that? Well, it's not fair, is it? Because it looks like this worm is reaching further down the board, but it's only because he's not lined up. It's not at the same start line, is he? It's not fair. So when we're comparing length, we need to make sure that all of our worms start at the same place. They need to have a starting line, don't they? So I'm going to use the top of my whiteboard for my starting line, but you might use the edge of a table or a nice straight ruler or a nice straight piece of string. It doesn't matter what you use as long as all of your worms start from the same place. It's got to be fair for us to be able to compare them. All right. Once you've got your starting line, you're going to put all of your worms along it, okay? Whoops, my blue tack is losing some of its stickiness. Right, now, once they're all lined up fairly, we're going to have a look and see which is the longest and which is the shortest. Now you can choose. You might put your worms in order of shortest one first and then get a bit bigger till you get to the longest one. Or you might go for the longest one first and then get a bit smaller till you get to the smallest one. Doesn't matter which way round you do it because you're still putting them in order either way. Which of my worms is my longest worm, guys? It's this one, isn't it? And how do we know? We know because it reaches the furthest down the board. It's the longest worm. So I'm going to keep that one there as my longest one. And then I want to see which worm is going to come next. So I want the one that's not as long as this one, but it's still longer than the other ones. Is it this one? It's not this one, is it? Because this one is still longer than that one. So I'm going to move these two out of the way and put this one over here next because he is next in line. He's not as long as this one. He's shorter than this one, but he's longer than the other two. So he needs to come next. Right. So let's compare my other two then. So I've got this one and this one. Okay, which one should come next, guys? Is this one in the right place? He's not, is he? Because he is shorter than this one, but he's actually shorter than this one too. So this worm needs to come next because he is, whoops, shorter than this one. My worm's trying to escape. But he's longer than this one. Okay? This one is the shortest one. He reaches the least distance down the board, so he is our shortest one. So we've got longest and shortest. All right? Try and describe what these two are like in comparison to the other worms as well. Try and use those clever comparative words for me. So for example, we might say, this worm is shorter than this one, but he's longer than this one, isn't he? This worm is longer than this worm, but he's shorter than this worm and this worm. So I'm using my comparative verbs to describe what they're like. Longest, shortest, longer, shorter. Those are all awesome comparative words to use. I wonder if you can think of any other ones. What about biggest and smallest and bigger and smaller? You could try those out for me today, couldn't you? Those mean the same things. So make yourself some worms and then put them in length order for me, remembering to be fair, and then see if you can use your comparative language to describe them to your grown-up. Describe how you've put them in order, guys, okay? Now, once you've done that job, if you'd like another thing to do, I've put you a special game on the following card that you could play with everyone in your family. Now, to play that game, you have to get your grown-up to make some worms, or you could make some worms, and someone needs to hide them around the house, and then you're going to have a race to see who can find as many worms as they can in 3 minutes. Once your 3 minutes is up, you have to join all the worms you found together, and you get to see who can make the longest worm. So the more worms that you find, the longer your worm will be. Now, when you've made your worms, either in this way or in your game, maybe see if you can find something around your house that's as long as that worm. For example, this worm is about as long as my little finger. Maybe set yourself a challenge, guys. Can you make a worm that's longer than your arm? My arm's so long it doesn't fit in the screen anymore. Do you think you could make a worm that's that long? Can you make a worm that's even tinier than your little finger? It's all about exploring length today, guys. So have lots of fun making your worms and try and use those clever comparative words to describe what they're like. When you've made a few, put them in order for me and explain to your grown-up how you've organised them. Enjoy, everybody. Have fun comparing, and I'll see you after lunch, ready for Friday afternoon.